I'm a 90s kid, so when I think X-Files, my first memories of it are waking up in the middle of the night after having left the TV on, hearing the thin, terror-inducing opening theme. I was far too young to be watching it, and as much as it scared me, I could not look away. It took me a few years, but eventually I watched X-Files all the way through and consumed all of its films. So this game takes place during the series' 7th season, between like episodes 2 and 3, and is written by Tom Schnauz. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Doesn't really matter. Who had previously written 2 episodes of The X-Files and would go on to write 7 episodes of Breaking Bad and 14 episodes of Better Call Saul. So he's kind of a big deal. The X-Files have absolutely infected the pop culture zeitgeist in regards to sci-fi and horror. So when I found out that there was a PS2 X-Files game after having just beaten the PS2 The Thing game, I was kind of stoked, and I'd been waiting for this moment for a long time. I've been wanting to play this one for a while, and I did. And you know, the game has its ups and downs, and I'm pretty damn excited to talk to you about them. So go ahead, subscribe, and give me a thumbs up if you love the X-Files. And let's move on to talking about X-Files. Resist or Serve. The game's intro opens up on a scene of a small Russian family running to something or from something when suddenly a UFO crashes in the vicinity, killing the 2 parents and leaving the infant alone and alive, only to be infected by Purity, the black oil virus. It's basically the sentient life forms of an extraterrestrial life form, and it assumes control of its host. It's not really a virus, despite being called a virus. Not that I'm railing on that. It's not really important. I'm just saying. I'll be calling it Purity throughout the review. So when it is mentioned, I am referring to the black oil virus. So Mulder and Scully are on their way to a small town in Colorado called Red Falls. On the drive, they're discussing this case with your typical Mulder and Scully banter that you expect from an episode. They're discussing Caitlin and Maddie Winslow, who went missing 2 weeks prior,
only to reappear recently, coinciding with the mysterious deaths of 3 Red Falls residents.
Most of the town citizens blame the girls for it, since they are practitioners of witchcraft. So they enter the town and they are immediately split up, and notice all the town's residents are zombie-like. Undead generally. In the town center, Mulder finds Maddie Winslow hung from a tree. Following this, Mulder and Scully reunite briefly and head to the local doctor's office to examine a body that was collected. Scully,
a medical doctor,
performs an autopsy and then synthesizes an antidote to whatever the people in town have, and give a dose to Mulder, who was just recently infected. The 2 are once again split up. During this period, Mulder receives a note from a stranger to open a particular P.O. box at the local post office, and inside resides the stiletto, the tool used to dispatch aliens by striking them on the back of their neck. Mulder and Scully eventually meet up at the local grocery store that Caitlin Winslow worked at and find her. As they attempt to leave, the sheriff shows up and he's infected with Purity. Now, while Mulder's dealing with him, Scully and Caitlin escape out the back, and as soon as that door swings open, Caitlin runs off screaming. Scully catches up, and it is revealed that Caitlin was infected with Purity. It exhumes itself from her, killing her in the process, and begins pursuing Scully. She quickly escapes into the air ducts of an underground bunker that houses the last remaining survivors from the town. Mulder eventually meets up with her, and they quickly realize one of the citizens are not who they say they are, and they begin pursuing him. In the pursuit, he destroys the bunker, killing the last remaining citizens of the town. Mulder and Scully eventually end up at the Briar Lake facility, where they discover that it is the source of all chaos in town. It is fully loaded with tons of purity samples. Now, during this time, it is made clear that the girls did in fact share a psychic bond with one another, and that was the crux of the facility's research. They learned from Alex Krycek that they made clones of the girls using purity to amplify their abilities to help the scientists crack open the containment field of an alien artifact that was found at the crash site in Tunguska. They are able to dispatch the clones, and the artifact is quickly whisked away by a strange man in robes. They flee the facility and are airlifted out just in time to watch the city be destroyed very similarly to Raccoon City in a massive cover-up. The second episode is titled Resonance. It's the shortest of the three, and it opens up with a scene showing Krycek and the Smoking Man are working together. Then we cut to Mulder and Scully being debriefed with A.D. Skinner, who informs them of the 3 victims of the incident have been brought to an FBI facility so they can examine the bodies. He then tells them that they need to see a doctor to clear their health after exposure to the virus and potentially other toxins, to which they promptly ignore. The lone gunmen during this time were decrypting a data disk that Scully had procured from Briar Lake, and the gunmen informed them that the whole thing was in Russian and has many references to Tunguska, which is where Mulder was during his initial exposure to purity during the first 2 episodes of season 7. Mulder and Scully split up. Scully heads to Quantico to examine the bodies there, and Mulder head home to contact Marita Covarrubias to discuss transport to Tunguska. While Scully's doing her autopsy, she discovers the corpse's highly elevated tetrodotoxin in his gut. And it's in this moment she realizes that she is also infected with what's causing this, and rapidly throws together an antidote relieving her of the poisons. Now, during the autopsy, Mulder is home alone, suffering the debilitating side effects of the toxin, where he is living out a terrifying nightmare sequence where he's being pursued by the alien assassin and several other alien creatures. Eventually, he wakes up to Marita injecting him with the antidote. So back to Scully. After administering the antidote into herself, Scully immediately calls Mulder, who tells her that he knows and that Covarrubias gave him a shot of the antidote as well, and now he is headed to Tunguska to find the source. Now, while he's off heading to Tunguska, Scully, with the aid of the lone gunman, infiltrate a company mentioned in the data disk called Rausch Biotechnologies. While there, they discover the corpse of one of the psychic creatures that are basically the muscle of the entity, the man who is trying to spread the latest batch of purity worldwide. She also finds another data disk that contains a lot of data on Mulder that cataloged what occurred while he was abducted at Tunguska. She also manages to obtain a fragment of the artifact that was moved from Briar Lake. So after leaving Rausch, her and the gunman go their separate ways, and Scully heads to Tunguska to meet up with Mulder. So this last chapter, Reckoning, opens with an off-screen plane crash that drops Mulder right into the heart of Tunguska, who is immediately accosted by survivors of the project there who want to take his arm off to make sure he's not infected. So he flees and ends up deep within the facility. Covarrubias soon contacts Mulder and informs him that Scully has just arrived, and tells them that Krycek and Cancer Man are also there waiting for him, and it was her job to lead him there, so they could ambush him. So Mulder, armed with this information, hunts them down and is immediately ambushed by Krycek and Cancer Man. So Scully lands and immediately seeks out Mulder. She finds him strapped to a machine that Krycek and the Smoking Man were using to help locate the craft. It is here we learn that Cancer Man had injected himself with Mulder's DNA to help locate the craft, but it wasn't enough, and he needed Mulder to do the thing, which they had just done while he was knocked out. So bada bing bada boom. So the two leave and immediately find Covarrubias locked in a closet, and she tells him that the entity is a conduit for the power of the artifact. So they all leave to go to the Siberian forest where the spacecraft lies in wait. And as they leave the facility, they are separated from Covarrubias and discover their helicopter pilot is infected. So they just drive the rest of the way.
If you're doing this, you're not doing it alone. Let's go. Show me a spaceship.
I knew you were here.
Mulder and Scully get to the chapel, where they are immediately separated by some creature within the lake. Mulder enters the chapel, where he is immediately confronted by Krychek. They get into a firefight where eventually Krychek is crying like a baby begging Mulder not to do this, and Mulder defeats him, and the Cancer Man ambushes Mulder. And he says the name of the game, resist or serve, before Mulder passes out. After this, he wakes up deep in the bowels of the chapel where he meets up with Scully. They get to the main chamber and split up from there. Mulder goes to find a spacecraft, and Scully stays back to decipher the markings on the wall. Scully is then immediately ambushed by one of the entity's minions, and, she dispatches him, and then confronts the entity in the next room. After replacing a piece of the artifact she had, then she kills the entity. All the while, Mulder is in the spacecraft fighting off, a different but also the same entity and some bona fide extraterrestrials. He kills them and escapes the ship thanks to a rope Scully tossed down. The two flee the facility and Scully gets knocked out when the ship's taken off, and they make it to the shore of the lake, and Mulder wakes up in time to see the ship take off while Scully just lays there all dumb and shit, once again not witnessing a really cool alien event. Never gets old.
Scully, you have to look.
Mulder! What happened?
Well...
Anyway, so they end up back at FBI HQ where they are reprimanded for ignoring direct orders to drop the case and their ridiculous ass story. But Skinner steps in and refuses to let the X-Files get shut down at this time, and A.D. Kirsch is not happy about that at all. But as we all know, he gets his win eventually, even if temporarily. So the story is the strongest part of the game. Not that the rest is all that weak. There's some really strong immersive elements here outside of the story itself. Namely, when playing, it feels like you're in an X-Files episode, which is really the least I could have asked for with this, and was generally why I wanted to play this game. The inclusion of all the main principal cast is also kind of a huge deal. This is absolutely which helps sell you the idea that these are lost X-Files episodes. My first encounter with Krychek, for example, had me looking like Leo pointing at that damn TV. Being able to spend some time with the lone gunman, which was such a treat. They are absolutely one of my favorite parts of the series, and they have arguably one of the best spin-off shows ever made. On top of that, the voice acting is genuinely great, with one exception. However, I found Gillian's performance of Scully to be mostly flat, but David ate on this, so he more than made up for it with a very energetic and lively Mulder performance.
Trailer home 2 weeks ago, only to reappear recently, coinciding with the mysterious deaths of 3 Red Falls residents.
Coinciding. I'm guessing I wouldn't be looking at their profiles unless someone thought these girls were directly involved.
Actually, most of the angry citizens of Red Falls hold the twins responsible. It seems Mandy and Caitlin Winslow are practitioners in the ancient art of witchcraft.
Witchcraft?
Pilgrims want justice. The officer who contacted me, Sheriff Bud Smith, is concerned about the twins' safety.
Are you telling me we're driving into a witch hunt, Mulder?
If you want to catch witches, you have to go on a witch hunt, Scully.
And I assume there's a reason other than one of the girls wears a pentagram to make you believe they both practice witchcraft.
Those fingers in my hair, that sly come hither stare. Do I have to recite the rest of the lyrics?
I got the joke, Mulder.
Come on, Scully, you know the words. Sing with me.
Mulder, these victims were strangled, brutalized in horrific ways with someone's bare hands. An assailant profile would have to start with a very large, extremely powerful male.
And you'd be right. All the evidence, including fingerprints, points to one man, Frank Hawthorne.
So why isn't Frank Hawthorne the primary suspect?
Because Frank Hawthorne died in a drunk driving accident 24 hours prior to the deaths of the 3 murder victims.
And the people of Red Falls believe that Mandy and Caitlin Winslow are using black magic to... what? Raise the dead and create killer zombies?
Kids today, huh?
Mulder, you're not buying into that mob mentality. You can't tell me teenage girls with a high school interest in the occult have somehow managed to raise the dead.
Hey, I've seen them do it on Buffy.
Mulder, stop! Oh, God. Sir, hang on. I'm a medical
I seen him
doctor.
do it on Buffy.
I want you to let me open your jacket, okay? Mulder!
I'm on it, Scully.
Mulder, he's shot. Deputy, who did this to you?
What's happening here?
Krychek was a little dull at his first introduction, but every encounter following was always a treat. Oh, and William B. Davis, the man, the myth, the legend.
He's unconscious, Fox.
I should kill you where you stand, you sick, twisted bastard.
Alex is gonna pay for what he's done. He wanted to kill you, not me. He deceived me and tried to take something that doesn't belong to him.
And it belongs to you?
It belongs to all of us. You more than anyone deserve to see what's down there.
A ship.
More than that, the vision in our mind. It's real. You know what's down there. There's alien life in that ship, waiting to be reawoken.
What have you done to me?
I'm opening a door for you, Fox. The path is yours to take.
Cancer Man, CGB Spender in the flesh. In 2002, he also lent his voice to the Thing game, which if you've seen my review of that, you know I think he absolutely killed it. There's also a ton of bonus content that shows you briefly many of the actors doing their voice work in the studios. So if you're an X-Files fan, you will absolutely feel right at home playing this game. It looks, feels, and sounds like the X-Files.
Sure. Okay. All right, this is the character of Cigarette Smoking Man. And the first cue we're going to do is 3M1.
Mulder made contact. He didn't have the reaction we expected, just the opposite. I don't think Mulder's gonna make it.
That's unacceptable. The success of the project depends on the light.
I can help you. I can help you find the ship.
You can kiss my ass!
You don't have to do this.
So as far as gameplay goes, Resist or Serve feels so much like Resident Evil 2. Not that that's a bad thing. It ain't the GOAT for no reason. But there's a few differences in gameplay. I want to talk about the tank controls first, because generally I dislike tank controls. I think I might be in the minority on this. Horror fans, sound off in the comments. Do you guys like tank controls? I don't. I do not like tank controls. And I don't know if it was just this game or an overall problem with tank controls, but I often found myself doing these tiny little circles in a room because the camera kept changing, putting me back exactly where I was, and it drove me absolutely crazy. But I persevered and I pushed through. It was a little rough at times, but I did it. The inventory system, however, is a drastic improvement over the early Resident Evil series. Mulder and Scully have pockets that can be stuffed with whatever you can pick up. Key items, guns, ammo, whatever. No restrictions. Which I get that inventory management is a huge draw for the genre, but I found the early Resident Evil titles were a little overly restricting. So in this one, you can shove your shotgun into your pocket without having to worry about sacrificing something, and you know, I was really into that. There's also a few other guns you can use. You get your pistol, shotgun, and AK. In my Scully playthrough, I found a Magnum revolver in this dart gun that basically killed all the infected in one shot. It was tight. There weren't any grenades that I knew of, but early on you get a pretty strong supply of Molotovs. If you pay attention to your surroundings enough, you can find it. Granted, you have to craft it from beer bottles, gasoline, and some rags, but still, I threw every last one of them on my first boss fight. Every single one gone on that first fight. The combat itself is generally fine. Basic tank control studio stuff, no real surprises. So if you go in expecting Resident Evil 2 combat, you're gonna feel right at home. There is, however, one surprise. This fucking kick. Man, they were right when they said this was like Resident Evil. It felt so right to just kick the shit out of anything I could knock down, and I rarely missed an opportunity to kick the shit out of things to death. But as you saw in that clip, it can take a very long time to kick shit to death. But it can potentially save you a lot of ammo, which you are going to want to do, trust me. There's also a few severe difficulty spikes that nearly made the game unfinishable, and it was partially my fault. At one point I had to enable cheats to make sure I could get through. So when I tell you conserve your resources, trust me, do it. You will not regret doing so. Granted, it's not as hard as that one section from The Thing, but it's still pretty damn miserable. So if you're looking for something genuinely terrifying, this might not be it. It really all depends on how scary you think the X-Files is, and by that I mean the game. Again, the game is exactly like the series. So if you find the more serious episodes to be scary, you will undoubtedly find this to be scary. And X-Files can be pretty damn scary. I often think about the episode Field Trip, where Mulder and Scully end up in the digestive tract of a hallucinogenic mushroom colony, and it really feels like the end for them. And I will never walk away from a conversation about X-Files without mentioning Squeeze. It is one of the most popular episodes. It's about a serial killer who can fit into the tiniest location, stretching out his body to inhuman lengths and nearly kill Scully in her own apartment. I mean, it doesn't sound scary when I say it like that, but it is a damn good episode, like top 10 for me. And as far as the game's genre goes, it is pure horror survival. You will be fighting to maintain your resources, and because of that, enemies and bosses can be very hard to kill. So you will feel for your survival very often, and you may even make mistakes that cost you later down the line, as I did. I went into a boss fight not realizing it was coming after having spent all my health items, and I had very little ammo. It was not fun at all. Fear was really all I felt in that small moment. So if you find X-Files scary, this is going to be, a really strong experience for you. If you find it to be like kind of thrilling, that's what you're going to feel. Like whatever you feel when you watch X-Files, you are going to feel that. And if you have never watched the X-Files, I highly recommend at least watching the first season before playing this, because it'll really give you a feel of what to expect from the other characters in the world and the way the X-Files universe works. So X-Files has always been first and foremost a platform for stories, and some of the best stories ever told can be found within the library of X-Files episodes. And the game is one of them. The story is so good. You feel like you're a part of it when playing, and that's really something special. And it might not be as scary as Resident Evil 2, but it feels like playing it, which is nice to not be surprised by like the controls or just general gameplay. So should you buy this? Unless you're a collector who really wants to play this on native hardware, no. The game can go anywhere between $40 to $110 on eBay, and I'm sure you can find it at like a garage sale or maybe a pawn shop at the odd thrift store, but otherwise, purchasing this it doesn't benefit the development team in any way. Any of the teams really. There's no way to purchase it brand new, so it's the only person benefiting is going to be some guy across the state or across the country, which is fine. You know, we're all struggling out here. So then, how do you play this? Emulation, baby! PCSX2 specifically. Now, you're gonna need your own BIOS files, and legally I cannot explain to you how to find a BIOS files, but I'm sure if you something it'll be particularly easy. There's also the matter of acquiring the game, to which I also cannot help you with, but they are readily available and easy to find. Down below in the description, I'll drop a link to PCSX2 so you'll be able to get that with ease. I played this emulated, and all the footage behind is captured from that, and I beat the game in about 13 hours doing both campaigns, so we can assume that the average runtime is between 12 and 16 hours. Scully's campaign is a good bit longer than Mulder's. Anyway, I had a blast playing this. It's not like the most glamorous game or the best game. It's fun. It is a fun game. It was a good game. It was the X-Files game. I went in excited to play, and I walked away from this just as excited having played it. It was a very pleasant experience, despite the hardships of fucking tank controls and the occasional difficulty spikes. Those can be pretty unforgiving, but otherwise it's fun. If you like the X-Files, you love the X-Files, you are going to enjoy this game. So with that, please like and subscribe. Anyway, that's it. That's the video. Slosh out.